Just look at what I bought. This is a 2011 Alienware Aurora R4 PC in a $3,000 configuration for its time. And while I'm opening the box it arrived in, write in the comments how much you think I paid for this 20-kilogram monster in 2026. Of course, they packed it like it was some kind of fragile item. Those of you who've seen these computers are probably asking, where's that glorious rooster comb on top that gets bigger depending on the PC's temperature? But this is a different model, without the comb, and it's no worse because of it. As you can see, it's pretty long, so let's measure it. Hold on a second. A lot of my viewers like measuring things with body parts, so let's count the length in feet. But as you can see, I'm short by about this much. Seriously, who were these measurements made for? A dinosaur? There's no way everyone had feet that big. From what I understand, if your foot is that size, you basically have a free ruler with you at all times. Anyway, this case is 2.5 of my feet long, or 2 imperial feet, or 60 centimeters. That's why it looks like a train, because it's longer than it is tall. Just look at this side panel removal system. It's actually really cool. I like this kind of stuff. The panel itself honestly feels heavier than the door of some old cheap car. They definitely didn't cheap out on plastic either from the looks of it. It actually looks pretty serious inside, but it smells like old grandpa's, especially when it's running. So today we're gonna fully take it apart, wash it, upgrade it, and overclock it. But first, let's plug it in and see what kind of specs this thing has. Someone once commented, so when are there finally gonna be Xeons on this channel? We really miss this cheap garbage. Well, here you go. An unlocked Xeon with 6 cores and 12 threads, the i7-3930K on socket 2011. Here's what it can do at stock, at least on paper. Honestly, even the memory still puts up decent numbers today, considering it's DDR3 and I haven't even touched overclocking yet. Gaming performance, of course, leaves a lot to be desired, although Minecraft, the latest version, I should point out, runs almost without stuttering. Far Cry 3 from 2012 runs great too, though I was mostly testing the CPU there. GTA 5, even back then, didn't run very well on ultra settings. As you can see, 22 FPS is just embarrassing. Anyway, before it catches fire for good, let's take it apart already. And while I'm doing that, I'll explain how everything works in here. There's definitely a lot to talk about. The GTX 580 was actually one of the top configurations for this PC. Of course, probably not this exact one with the Asus DirectCU cooler, but more likely some lower style version. This one was sent to me by a subscriber named Vadim specifically for the video. And by the way, he's a pretty experienced overclocker who competes on HWBot as part of a team, and the team made a great banner. By the way, they're currently ranked 5th in the world. This PC has plastic shoved into every possible place, where it belongs and where it absolutely doesn't. At first, you have no idea how any of it comes off, so you start yanking on it from every angle until something breaks, because the plastic here is strong, but your stupidity is stronger, so naturally you pull even harder. But then you realize it all actually comes off pretty easily. Every part has its own clips. Well, almost every part. For example, this shroud covering the GPU had none. As you can see, the cooling setup here is a single radiator proprietary liquid cooler with a pump that uses a weird power connector. It actually looks pretty decent considering it's already 15 years old. I don't know the exact speed of this fan, but it probably spins at over 4,000 RPM. And the noise and vibration are so bad it's genuinely a little scary to stand next to it. Still, there does seem to be liquid inside, so that's something. I was curious what was hiding under this cover that's held on by 12 screws. Good lord, back then they were really not trying to save on screws. I knew it. The pump is glued together with honey. Probably the same honey that gives this computer that wonderful smell when it's running. I'm putting this cover back on before a honey badger shows up and steals my liquid cooler. This is a special fan that blows air over the graphics card while it's running. And by the way, the memory in here isn't exactly cheap junk either. It's actually pretty decent for overclocking. It's Crucial Ballistic Sport, 4 sticks, 8 gigabytes each. DDR3 in 2011 cost about $100 per stick, but I'm upgrading that too today. This little thing that the liquid cooler fans plug into is apparently called the lightning board. I seriously doubt it lights up, unless the power supply starts having problems, in which case maybe it'll light up in a very different way. Everything else connected to the motherboard, as you can see, is pretty standard, just like in other PCs. I really like that the zip ties in here are reusable. What I don't like is actually reusing them. This is a specially trained fan that cools 2 memory modules. Yes, exactly. 1 fan for 2 sticks, even though there are 4 sticks total. I'm guessing that's because this case wasn't only used with socket 2011, where RAM slots were placed on both sides of the CPU. As you can see, the chipset and the VRM also have their own cooling fans. The USB port selection here isn't exactly generous, as you can see. Cable management is one of this case's strongest features, because technically you don't even have to do it here. Even though, to be fair, someone did do it, just very quickly and with zero enthusiasm. This is the so-called Master I/O Control Board, a proprietary solution for controlling all the fans and lighting in this PC. It keeps everything organized, as you can tell. I really don't understand why they couldn't just give the motherboard more control and avoid all this bureaucracy. Apparently, they don't like giving too much power to one authority. This is the first time I've seen a connector like this on a power supply. Dear God, there are so many proprietary solutions in here, it's insane. Good thing I changed my mind about stuffing this case with more modern components. I would have aged 7 years and 5 days. And as you may have noticed, Dell definitely didn't hold back on screws. One of my viewers said Dell must have paid their workers in bolts. And honestly, it kind of looks like this 875-watt PSU is made out of 2 power supplies strapped together. Despite the absurd amount of plastic parts, this case is seriously loaded with all kinds of boards and what looks like RGB lighting. The more screws you remove from this case, the more of them seem to appear. That's something I noticed. Just look at this interesting side panel removal mechanism. If only I knew how to take it apart calmly without swearing, it would be perfect. There are so many screws per square foot in here that if I didn't have an electric screwdriver, I'd probably still be filming this video a month from now. Finally, after removing about 2 kilos of screws, the plastic parts started calmly falling off by themselves. All that was left was removing the front and side panels, and as it turned out, that was not exactly easy. Look at this sneaky thing trying to run away from me. You're not escaping me. After a while, I realized the rear panel was, in fact, held on by screws. Ha ha! Who could have possibly guessed? And after I removed them, no, the panel still didn't come off. Just meant the plastic parts could now be removed. And only after I did that did I get access to the backup screws that were actually holding the front panel in place. Well, finally, but that's still not all. There were still 7 more screws holding the front USB panel. You thought that was it. Nope, these 2 still had to come out, and on the back side of the front panel, 5 more were hiding. And I hadn't even touched the very first side panel yet. The thing is basically made entirely out of screws. At this point, I don't even know what I like more about this case, the number of screws or the number of clips holding some of these plastic parts together. Honestly, I'm impressed. There's gotta be at least 200 grams of screws here, and that's still not all of them because some I didn't even remove. Just look at how many parts our Alienware exploded into, and I still have to put all this back together. But first, it needs a bath, because Alienware isn't going to wash itself. Hopefully this helps regulate the smell a little. And while I'm working on this, I wanted to suggest checking out the channel membership feature or my Patreon, because as we all know, money doesn't earn itself, and I do enjoy money. Man, I hate my own lack of attention so much. So, what do I do now? Well, I already got it wet, so I might as well wash it. It can't really get worse at this point. After that, I quickly wiped down all the fans this PC has, and there are 6 of them in here. Turns out this grill comes off, but I can't actually remove the fan itself, so I'll just clean it on the surface. The blades weren't exactly filthy, but they were definitely coated in years of greasy fingerprints. The motherboard fans were a lot more interesting to clean. Ideally, I should have removed them and also replaced the thermal pads while I was at it, but that would be a little too luxurious for a computer like this. So I just wiped down whatever I could reach, and that was that. Like I said, I'm upgrading the CPU. Not that the i7-3930K is particularly weak, but Vadim sent me a somewhat more modern option for this platform, the i7-4960X. It's the top CPU for this platform, and it's also a 20nm chip. Vadim had this thing running over 5 GHz on a couple of cores. Vadim also sent me these Ballistics Elite sticks, which I'm gonna install instead of the Ballistics Sport. Back in the day, these cost about $140 per stick, and they have more aggressive XMP timings and frequencies. We'll see later whether it was actually worth it. Damn, it's been so long since I last installed Xeons into these service-style sockets that I forgot the order for tightening the retention brackets. Still, everything seems fine. I'm also upgrading the SSD to a 512GB Samsung 840 Pro, which cost $600 back in those days because the system originally had a Samsung 840 EVO with only 120GB, which is just way too little now. I also tried taking apart this proprietary power supply. Oh man, what a nightmare. The screws in here are tightened so insanely hard it looks like nobody has ever taken this thing apart before. Weirdly enough, I still couldn't pull it out. Something was blocking it, so I started unscrewing it from the other side. As you can see, there are two boards here, not one, but the other board wouldn't come out either. So in the end, I just blew the dust out of whatever I could reach and screwed everything back together, just to stay on the safe side and not break anything. I also wiped down all the cables inside this case with regular wet wipes, washed the liquid cooler radiator in the sink, and started putting everything back together. And even though this case has a ridiculous number of parts, putting it back together turned out to be much easier than taking it apart. Although, who am I kidding? It was way harder. If I hadn't recorded the disassembly on video, I probably wouldn't have been able to reassemble it at all because there are so many different screw sizes in here, and I very successfully dumped them all into one pile, then suffered terribly trying to figure out which screws belong to which part. Thankfully, the more I put it back together, the easier it got. The side panels caused a special kind of pain though, because they attach with clips. I thought taking them off was hard, but putting them back on turned out to be even worse. After about 15 tries, I finally got everything back in place, and I think I actually lined up all the slots in the case. As for the disk drive, after I successfully washed it, I decided I really didn't feel like reinstalling it and plugging power back into it, so I'm rebuilding the system without it. Another thing that was pretty annoying to reinstall was this piece that opens the side panel. It was held in by a whole pile of screws, so to make sure everything worked properly, I had to screw in a whole pile of screws just to test whether it was working correctly. Everything else, like the front cover that hides the ports on the front of the case, didn't cause any major problems and works just fine, as you can see. Man, even though this case is old, it's still pretty cool to have these weird exotic features like USB ports that can be completely hidden. Or, for example, the side panel that doesn't use screws and opens with a special latch, or whatever that thing is called. Or the pre-built lighting inside the case that lights up the rear motherboard ports. Sure, there are motherboards with illuminated rear I/O too, but those definitely aren't budget options, and this case already has that built in. The only catch is that all of it is controlled by a separate board, so you probably can't just throw in a newer motherboard without replacing everything else too. Although you can keep this power supply, because the only proprietary part here is the modular system, which, as you may have noticed, isn't exactly very modular because all the cables plug into the PSU through one giant connector block. You can't just plug in what you need and leave the rest out. Either way, the cables going to the motherboard are completely standard. So, yes, you can replace the motherboard, but this extra board only works together with the original one, which means the lighting and some of the fans won't work with a different motherboard. I don't think these drive rails were really designed for 2.5-inch drivers, but I couldn't find any other mounting hardware for them in this PC, even though I'm pretty sure this machine came with an SSD in some configurations. As for HDDs, I'm skipping them completely because who needs extra noise? This PC already sounds like a tractor, and even its weight isn't enough to kill the vibrations. I really don't understand why they added these two extra plastic pieces. I'm guessing they decided the case still didn't have enough screws. I'm using MX6 thermal paste, which is an absolute pain to spread, but if you do manage to spread it, it's actually pretty good. By the way, you can screw this mounting plate on crooked, which means the CPU gets clamped down unevenly and the PC just won't turn on. That actually happened to me, so then I also had to play detective and figure out why the system wouldn't power on. I did some cable management, or at least something that vaguely resembles cable management, and started putting the plastic armor back where it belongs. Damn it, I installed a few parts wrong and now their cables are in the way. For the graphics card, I'm upgrading to this GTX TITAN 6GB from 2013, which has 4 times more VRAM than the stock GTX 580. So this is what I'd call an intelligent upgrade for a 2011 PC. Just install 2013 parts in it. Later on, I'll throw in an even newer GPU for modern games. You have no idea how long I spent looking for the software that controls the lighting and some of the fans in this PC. I dug through the entire Dell website and barely found it. But now, as you can see, we can finally control the lighting in this PC. But now let's finally see what this thing can actually do in games. At stock settings, as you can see, the difference after the upgrade isn't just tiny, it literally doesn't exist. Here's what the GTX Titan could do back in the day. Honestly, not bad considering everything here is running on ultra settings, but I expected more. Now, when it comes to overclocking, this motherboard is not exactly the most convenient thing in the world. a lot of features are missing. For example, you can't save multiple settings profiles and you can't lower CPU voltage at all. You can only increase it. And it turned out that these Ballistics Elite sticks are actually worse for overclocking on this board than the stock Ballistics Sport. In other words, Sport works at the same timings where the Elite kit won't even boot. So I continued with the stock modules, and after about 15 rounds of moving the BIOS reset jumper and pulling the graphics card out of the case, I ended up with these overclocking results. I got the memory up to 2133 MHz and the CPU up to 4.3 Hz at 140 watts. But that same 3930K, when overclocked to 4.4 GHz, already starts eating close to 180 watts, and the fan on the liquid cooler spins so hard it almost sucked me in. But here's what we get from the 4960X after overclocking. FPS went up by 22%, according to my calculations. But you're probably curious about the overclocking difference between these two brothers, and as it turns out, 3930K is actually faster, because it overclocked 100 MHz higher. But for modern games, I'm sticking with the 4960X, since it has more instruction sets that can actually help performance in newer titles. The Dean was really worried about whether the GTX 580 he sent me would even fit in this case, but apparently he hasn't seen my SFF PC with an RTX 4090 video. So, yes, that's exactly what I'm putting in here, the 4090. Some of my Patreon viewers who got to see this video before everyone else were even more worried. Link is in the description, of course. As for using only 3 power cables for the 4090 even though the adapter has 4, for those who don't know, the 4th cable is only needed if the card is going to pull more than 450 watts, and that only happens in one case, if you raise the power limit and overclock it. So 3 cables are enough. Let's start with the big guns. The new Resident Evil Requiem. Ultra settings, path tracing, and damn, just look at this PC go! In the hardest scene in the game, which is right at the beginning, it puts out 60 FPS, and after that it's doing a solid 90 to 100 FPS with the stable frame graph. Of course, some games that require AVX2 and FMA instructions don't run, although apparently there are ways to force some of them to work even without those instructions. But a huge number of modern games, as you can see right now, run very well. And even though the fog of war makes it hard to see, in Kingdom Come 2 the lowest I saw was 45 FPS. In Stalker 2 and other Unreal Engine games, playing on epic settings is obviously gonna be rough, but on medium I think you could absolutely beat pretty much any game. At least the well-optimized ones, as you can see, run pretty nice. So, yes, this PC is clearly better than the top-end $5,000 AMD PC from 2013 that I built on my channel. But what do you think? How bad or good was this PC? Write your opinion in the comments. Huge thanks to my sponsors for the support. See you later.